Hello and what is up everybody? I want to welcome you to my channel for today's video. Today we are going over Unholy Death Knight and their monstrous DPS and how you can utilize it and be on top of that leaderboard. Make sure to head on over to Twitter and give me a follow for live alerts on when I do release new content and join our Discord community. I know we'll be happy to have you and get to know you guys. Alright, so with all that being said, let's hop right into this video. Alright guys, so one of the first things I want to go over is going to be our hotfixes. We actually only have one, and it's that our mastery got its effectiveness reduced by 15%. So right now I am sitting at 47% mastery, and that's increasing my shadow damage done by 46.9%. So if we go down here and look, almost every single one of our abilities is a shadow damaging effect. So our mastery being reduced is really kind of a big deal, but the fact that it only got reduced by 15%, I think we should be thankful for. That going into our stat priority, you're going to want to still prioritize mastery, haste, crit, and then verse. I want to make a quick statement when you're going to look into your covenant abilities. I chose to go the Necrolord route simply because I will be PvPing a little bit as well. It does do a ton of damage, so our Necrolord ability is Abomination Limb. Sprout an additional limb dealing 6,126 shadow damage over 12 seconds to 5 nearby enemies. Every 1 second an enemy is pulled to your location if they are farther than 8 yards from you. The same enemy can be pulled once every 4 seconds. So that's why I chose to take it, simply for the PvP aspect of it. Now the damage is good. So the only, I think, real, like when it comes to Unholy, the real competitor is going to be the Night Fae, which does Death's Due, which makes your Scourge Strike cleave onto, like, I think it's 5 targets. So that is good when it comes to AoE, but with that being said, we have enough AoE. So I chose, and plus the Abominational Limb, slapping hands. I mean, the animation is really good, and I do recommend playing some PvP and play around with it, because Unholy and PvP right now is actually really good. So moving on. So our talent tree. I think that Unholy Death Knights have one of the most versatile talent trees there are. I mean, honestly, there's some of these rows that I don't believe you can go wrong. Right now I've been playing around with Infected Claws. It's been a really effective way to play Unholy Death Knight, simply because, like, when I'm trying to spam, and I hate spamming Festering Strike, and put Festering Wounds for that build up on AoE abilities and being able to cast my Apocalypse. So Clawing Shadows has been one of my favorites for the longest time. It does replace your Scourge Strike, but it deals 1,099 shadow damage and causes 1 Festering Wound to burst. So the real difference and the real make or break for this talent is going to be the fact that it's a 30-yard range. You can use it from 30 yards away. It's basically a ranged attack, and this becomes super helpful on boss fights, and especially going into Castle Nathria, where you might not know exactly, like, you're going to want to just stay away, and it helps with that. So Clawing Shadows is really good. I do like it for PvP as well, because you don't always want to be right up on them. You might want to try to kite them, and with us being Unholy Death Knights, where we're like wheelchairs and we don't really kite easily, that is one effective way to do it. So Clawing Shadows has been one of my favorites. It's got me out of a lot of trouble. Personally, for Mythic Plus, my final option and the best and the funnest for me thus far has been Infected Claws. And another reason for that is going into Tier 2, Bursting Sores, which is bursting a Festering Wound, deals 25% more damage and deals 398 shadow damage to 8 nearby targets. So that is huge. So here's the thing. Your Bursting Spores is going to be your AoE go-to in Tier 2. Ebon Fever is good, but you're going to be using more runes, casting Outbreak, and the damage just, it goes over half the time. And right now I believe it's already, 27 seconds. So, I mean, not having to worry about putting your plagues on like especially like boss fights and stuff for 27 seconds. It's kind of big. So it's just one thing you don't have to mitigate. And bursting swords is also simming out a lot higher in almost all AoE situations. It's huge. So the only thing that I would recommend is if you're looking to maybe be more effective on boss fights and go a little bit higher on your single target, Unholy Blight is going to be the way to go. Unholy Blight, surround yourself with a vial of swarm of insects for 6 seconds, stinging all nearby enemies and infecting them with the plague and an unholy disease that deals 633 damage over 14 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. Your minions deal 3% increased per stack to enemies infected by Unholy Blight. So Unholy Blight's really, really good, especially for single target. And if you do it right, you're really only going to have, I think it's like 8 seconds of downtime on your plague. While you're using that, you don't even have to use, because they do say if you're speccing into Unholy Blight that you don't want to be using your outbreak. It's a waste of a rune. For Mythic Plus situations, I would recommend Bursting Swords by far. So going down to tier 3, I use Asphyxiate. This one's really kind of up to you. I know a lot of people like to play around with Death's Reach. Death's Reach is good when you're going to be pulling a lot, but Asphyxiate's just kind of really more reliable interrupt. So it gives you that other interrupt. I think that this is one thing that Frost has over Unholy, that they have Blinding Sleet, and that is uncomparable to any of these in this group. So I would go Asphyxiate. All right, so moving on to tier 4, you're going to want to pick up the Pestilent Pustules. Pestilent Pustules is your go-to AoE Mythic Plus talent. Bursting a Festering Wound has a 10% chance to grant you Runic Corruption. So Runic Corruption is each runic power you spend has a 1.6 chance to increase your rune regeneration rate by 100% for 3 seconds, which is huge. Those 3 runes are absolutely huge. So just giving you another 10% chance to get that is actually, it's just meta. So the only other real valuable option is going to be Soul Reaper. The thing about Soul Reaper is, so after 5 seconds, if the target is below 35% health, this effect will explode, dealing an additional 3,202 shadow damage to the target. If the enemy that yields experience or honor dies while affected by Soul Reaper, gain Runic Corruption. Now, during a boss fight, you're only going to be killing the boss once. So during a boss fight, you don't get that effect. And during trash, that effect is minimal. So the real thing that you're getting out of here is the shadow damage, and it gives you like kind of an execute effect, which is really nice. And it is good, and it is a DPS increase on single target fights. So the thing about it is on most of these fights we've come to find out there's mostly cleave damage. There's ads, there's something. So you're not gonna really be getting the AoE efficiency out of Soul Reaper. The only thing you could do is use it on the ads before they die, which is, which you could do, but really your pestilence, it's just, your pestilence just going to be better. So moving on, tier 5, this tier, I normally run Death Pact in Mythic Plus situations, especially right now. There's a lot going on. A lot of people, they're not really understanding the fights completely. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Plus, I find myself saying I am unholy. I don't have a lot of mobility. So Death Pact has kind of really saved my butt a couple times. Now, the only thing about Death Pact is that you do get that 50% heal, but then you absorb the next 30% of healing coming in. Use it, let your healer know, and move on. Wraith Walk is good. You don't have that mobility, so Wraith Walk gives you just another form of mobility, but it is on a 1 minute cooldown. Spell Eater is super good on heavy magic damage fights, obviously. Spell Eater is an anti-magic shell, absorbs 30% more magic damage and lasts 5 seconds longer. So I do like using Spell Eater. Just a side note, in PvP, Spell Eater is a good go-to for double caster comps. Those freaking boomkins right now are just shredding, dude. Just absolutely shredding. So side note, PvP, Spell Eater is super good. But this tier is ultimately up to you. I'd run Death Pack. I mean, it's a huge on-use heal. It just healed me for 14,000. So, I mean, that's literally 50% of my health. So, Unholy Pact is the only option in this row. I haven't seen a single Unholy Death Knight with half a brain use anything else. Unholy Pact, Dark Transformation creates an unholy pact between you and your pet, igniting flaming chains and deals 4,891 shadow damage over 15 seconds to enemies in between you and your pet. While active, your strength is increased by 5%. It's insane. So remember, all shadow damage is increased by your mastery. If you're stacking mastery like you should be, you're going to be doing 50, you're going to be doing, in my case, 46.9% more shadow damage, which 46.9% of 4,007, I mean, that's almost an extra 2,000 damage. So it's 2,200 and probably some change. So Unholy Pact is absolutely insane. On top of that, strength increased by 5%. Use it on cooldown. All I'm saying. You will see your meters go insane. I broke my back, guys. Oh, no, really. I broke my back. So in the last dungeon that I was in, Unholy Pact was my 6th damage overall ability. I mean, coming from just the talent that you already have on a row that has no other options. That's absolutely insane. Use it. Unholy Pact. But with that being said, as you can see, like even my number 2 is Bursting Swords. Most of your damage in Mythic Plus is AoE. So you're building your damage, your talent tree around Mythic Plus. So Bursting Swords, number 2. Unholy Pact, number 6. So you can see now Abomination Limb, number 8. I'm telling you, man. So, and Sweeping Claws, I mean, number 13. I mean, it's above like the physical damage of my Scourge Strike. So with that being said, let's move on to our last talent tree option that we have. Basically, on this last tier, you're going to be choosing between Unholy Assault and Army of the Damned. Unholy Assault is strike the target, dealing 1,783 shadow damage, infecting the target with 4 festering wounds and sending you into a holy frenzy, increasing haste by 20% for 12 seconds. So that haste buff for me is super good. I'm running a haste trinket right now just to make sure that I am getting the haste that I need. Haste, it increases your rune regeneration, and also it increases the rate of which your dots do damage. So that is one reason why haste is so important. Army of the Damned, Death Coil and Epidemic reduce the cooldown of Apocalypse by 1 second and Army of Dead by 5 seconds. So that's one thing that it does that is huge. You definitely want to be using your Epidemic and your Death Coil whenever possible to dump your runic power. Make sure you get that stuff back ASAP. Now, additionally, Apocalypse and Army of the Dead summon a Mangus of the Dead for 15 seconds, who hurls frost bolts and shadow bolts at your foes. So just that being what it is, Mangus of the Dead does more damage than just your regular ghouls. So either one of these options are going to be good. If you are having haste issues, make sure you pick up Unholy Assault. If not, in all other cases, I would recommend going Army of the Damned. It's huge to be able to get that Apocalypse off a ton more. And that Army of Dead 5-second cooldown reduction is also good as well. Alrighty, so here we are at Ebb and Hold, and we are going to go over rotation. So our rotation's fairly easy. One thing you're going to want to note is if you did go with Unholy Assault, you're not going to want to pop your Unholy Assault until after you have used your Apocalypse. So on single target fights, like a boss fight, we're going to start with popping Army of Dead and going in, casting your Outbreak. And then you're going to apply Festering Strike twice. Sorry, I got my pet on passive. And then, come on, buddy. There we go. And then you're going to want to just be popping those runes, pop your Dark Transformation. Now go ahead and pop your Apocalypse and use your Unholy Assault. Now your Unholy Assault puts more runes on, so you're just popping them, man. You're just going. Using your Death Coil to dump your runic power. Make sure. Boom. Festering Strike. Now make sure you try not to over spam your Festering Strike. It's super easy to do, and I find myself doing it more. It's definitely the easiest hiccup you can have in your Death Knight rotation. So just make sure you're not doing that. Some people actually they recommend only using Festering Strike one time. To put just to like, I mean, it's only like two or three. But if you are running that infected claws, your pets will be putting on. So that's basically our rotation using Dark Transformation on cooldown, keeping your Festering Wounds up, bursting with Scourge Strike, making sure to dump your Runic Power with Death Coil. Now, if you're doing an AoE pool, using Dark Transformation on cooldown is key, and then making sure that you use Epidemic. So, Epidemic causes each of your plagues to flare up, dealing 398 shadow damage to the affecting enemies and an additional 159 shadow damage to all other near enemies. So, it's huge AoE. I mean, huge. Just trust me on that. So, building up your runic power on an AoE pool just to dump it on Epidemic is not a terrible idea. Alrighty guys, so coming into it, talking about our rune forging, we're basically going to want to just kind of stick with the Fallen Crusader. That 15% strength you get is just kind of hard to beat. As far as all your other enchants, the list is going to look something like this. You're going to want to enchant your gloves with Eternal Strength, your chest with either Eternal Stats, if it's a permanent raids piece, or Eternal Skirmish, if it's maybe something a little less valuable. It is about a 5 to 600 gold difference. Eternal Stats does increase your primary stats by 30 when the skirmish only increases your strength or agility by 20. So if you can afford, just go with the Eternal Stats. You're going to want to do your Cloak with Fortified Speed, which increases your stamina by 20 and your speed by 30. And you're going to want to enchant your ring with Tenet of Mastery, increasing your mastery by 16. Always be eating either a feast or ravioli with applesauce. And don't forget to do your Shaded Sharpening Stone for that extra 20 attack power on your main hand weapon. And that's going to be your enchants for your Unholy Death Knight. Alright, well that wraps it up for today's video, guys. Thanks for coming by. If you did like this video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. Good luck on your adventures as your Unholy Death Knight, but always remember, stay frosty.